was promoted over my best friend at work, and she pretended to be happy until I realized she'd been slowly sabotaging my projects behind the scenes and had sent anonymous tips to HR that almost got me fired for something I didn't do. She hugged me when I got promoted, smiled, clapped even, in the break room like she was proud of me. I thought she was. I did not second guess it because she's been my best friend since the day we interned. We started on the same day, shared lunch every afternoon, swapped stories about bad dates and grating bosses. She was the one who brought me soup when I was sick with the flu, the one who texted me "you got this" before big meetings. So when the manager called me in and declared that I'd be taking the new senior strategist role, my first thought was, wait till I tell Harper. And sure enough, she hugged me up with a big hug and exclaimed, finally, you totally deserve this. And I swear, I almost burst into tears. Not even over the news, but over how incredible it was to have someone who truly got the grind, the late nights, the impossible clients, the unpaid overtime supporting me. I didn't fully comprehend until many years later how securely that moment would cling to me like a falsehood. The little things started to shift perhaps a week later. We were working on a pitch, a pretty big one. We'd sit side by side and sort it out, alternating shooting ideas about. She started to drop away, claiming she was busy, sending me Slack messages instead of just talking to me like we used to. Then there was a client deadline, and the document she needed to submit was incomplete. She promised she had uploaded it, claimed to have done so, and I believed her, so I dashed out to redo everything in advance of the client call. I did not want her to lose her job. I didn't even report it to our manager. I thought it was an accident. That's what you get when you trust a person so much that you do not cross red flags off as red flags. You blame them on stress, poor timing, something else. A few weeks later, I walked by the printer and found pages of a pitch deck that I'd taken the time to work on with edits that I never typed. Off edits, they tainted the tone, added statistics from the wrong quarter. I thought maybe I had saved an old version or something, but when I checked the revision history, it was Harper's name on there. I just sat there staring at the screen, really confused about what I was looking at. I just thought to myself, she must have been trying to assist. Maybe she thought she was cutting it out. But during the same week, my supervisor called me into his office and asked why our client satisfaction scores had suffered. Someone had filed anonymous remarks reporting that I was disorganized and slow to deliver. I was shocked. I asked him who said it. He said it was from an HR tip line and was confidential. I didn't even know that we had one of those. The last time that I'd ever done that, I headed home that night with my chest in knots and my head spinning. I couldn't help but think, did I miss something? Am I really messing up? I had discussed it with Harper that night after a couple of drinks, not the whole thing. Just the fact that someone had complained to HR about me. And shaken I was. She paused a fraction of a second too long, then grumbled, well, people are jealous when you do well. That's what happens when you radiate more. I snorted uncomfortably. It was pleasant to hear. She seemed sincere. But now, looking back, I'm not so sure that pause was guilt, or strategy, or both. The next few months were a blur. My project schedules kept imploding, and I couldn't understand why. Clients would ask me to provide deliverables that I had no clue I was supposed to create. Internal communications would somehow fail to reach me. At one point, a presentation that I was giving crashed during the session because the file was corrupted. I wept in my kitchen floor the remainder of that evening, wine in hand, contemplating whether maybe I was burning out. Maybe I wasn't leadership material. That's when I started keeping a diary, chronicling everything. Dates, times, names of the files, comments, just so I could reassure myself that I wasn't going crazy. And in the midst of all of that, the elements started clicking together. There were things that didn't add up. Discrepancies, such as how Harper always appeared to know when I was struggling prior to mentioning it, or how work I'd given her was the kind that always turned into a disaster. It would have been paranoid to blame her, in all honesty. I didn't want it to be her. I would think, this is Harper. She's my friend. She moved me into my new apartment. She stood there and held my hand when I cried over my previous breakup. She can't be doing this. But the worst was yet to come. HR held a formal meeting with me about behavior problems, informed me that they had multiple anonymous reports that I'd been taking credit for other people's work, that I was being inconsiderate and uncooperative. I couldn't breathe. I sat there, looking at the woman on the opposite side of the table, trying to wrap my brain around it. Asked who told them, wouldn't say. Informed them that screenshots of messages and timestamps had been sent to them by someone who had the right to remain anonymous. When I asked to see the screenshots, she said they were internal evidence and could not be shared. I was embarrassed and scared, afraid to my very core. It felt like my entire reputation was disintegrating away from me and I didn't even know who the heck was holding the hammer. I phoned Harper that night and told her I was going to be fired. She gasped, "Oh my God, no, that's absurd. Who would do something like that to you?" And she was so genuine. I almost wept over the phone. She told me to fight it, not to give up. Make them wrong. And I so badly wanted to believe her that I let myself be pampered by the very same person who was secretly destroying me in the darkness. I didn't yet realize it, but I was sleeping with the enemy. I just hadn't yet opened my eyes. A few days after, I stayed late at the office just to complete all my work that I felt like I was falling behind on. The building was vacant, the lights were dimmed for the most part. That strange hum in the air when you are by yourself and the cleaning crew. I was fatigued but focused. Around 9:30, I realized I'd left my charger at my workstation and went back to get it, walking by one of the glass-walled conference rooms. That's when I saw her, Harper, sitting alone, laptop open, headphones around her head, mouth working slightly as though she was recording something. I didn't pay much mind at the moment, just waved off through the glass. She startled, actually jumped, then slammed her laptop shut. She joked as I came in that she was just ranting into a voice note to her therapist. Something about how this job was already causing her stress headaches. I didn't say anything, just grinned and took my charger, but my gut soured. Something about the way she leapt, the look on her face when she saw me, like a child who got caught stealing candy. It wasn't surprise, it was fear. I went the next morning earlier than usual, and I had looked through the shared drive. I went through folders, timestamp records, version history. I had no idea what I was looking for, but I found it. A hidden folder deep in one of our older client directories, titled Admin Drafts. It wasn't admin drafts, it was screenshots of my Slack messages, taken out of context. Email chains that had been altered to make it seem like I was blowing off client follow-ups. Even a partially completed report labeled Chronology of Concerns, where all mistakes I'd allegedly made were outlined with bullet points and dates, all blown out of proportion, distorted, or flat-out fabricated. And who was the creator? The metadata told me. Harper Lynn Wilkins, my best friend, my ride or die. The woman I cried with after my dad's surgery. She had written out a list of reasons why I had to be fired. I don't even know how long I just sat there staring at that folder. It was like the air got sucked out of the room. My ears rang, my face burned. I think I actually whispered her name softly, like I needed to hear it just so that I could believe it. Harper did this. I closed the folder, downloaded it all, and emailed it to myself from my personal account. I wasn't even angry yet. I just felt hollow. Like someone had reached inside of me and taken out my center. I spent the rest of that day pretending that everything was fine, smiling during meetings, laughing when she made some silly joke in the hallway. I watched her talk to people and noticed how good she was at it, at pretending, at being sweet and innocent and stabbing knives in the backs of people. I started reminiscing about conversations, things she'd said, times she'd warned me about others talking behind my back. Was she planting those things all along? Did she want to see how far she could push me before I cracked? I requested to speak to HR later in the week in a closed session. I showed it all to them, the folder, the screenshots, the metadata. I explained it in a gentle, tired voice as the HR rep's expression changed from skepticism to shock to one of shame. She nodded slowly, her pen moving across notebook pages, looking back at the files. At the end, she looked up and asked, "How long have you known?" I told her that I had worked it out for myself 5 days prior. "Why did you not come sooner?" she asked. I almost laughed, because I did not want to believe it. There was quiet. Then she said, "You're not the first one she's done this to." Those words punched me in the stomach. I blinked. What? She would not look at me and said, "Off the record, we have had previous complaints, but nothing concrete. They resign before they report. You're the first to come up with evidence." I don't know if that comforted me or not. I shook out of that office, not in fear now, with adrenaline, like my body was playing catch up on the truth. All that she'd done, all the disruption, the gaslighting, the broken trust, it wasn't personal. It was pattern, and I was just the next rung on her ladder. For the next 2 weeks, everything changed, incrementally, behind my back. HR conducted a formal inquiry, brought in IT to validate file histories, message threads. I dodged it as much as possible. I still had to collaborate with her, share meetings, pretend we were okay. Worst part was the pretending, gazing at the woman you used to love like a sister, and realizing that she had been stalking you for months. And then she wasn't at her desk one day. She was removed from Slack. The head of HR came to me later that afternoon and told me, "It's been handled." I asked if she was let go. She said she resigned. I didn't press it. I just nodded, walked back to my desk, scowled at the blinking cursor in a blank document, and for the first time in months, I wasn't afraid to inhale. Humans started to take notice, commenting on how I appeared more relaxed, lighter. Clients were complimenting my work once more. My boss even gave me constructive criticism, asked if I wanted to have any of the workflows redone. Things slowly came back to a feeling of normal, or a new normal, but there was something within me that had changed, forever. You can't just walk through betrayal like that and end up the same. I didn't cry when she walked away, didn't text, didn't block her either. I didn't need to. She disappeared on her own like a ghost. But one night, maybe 2 weeks or so after that, I got an anonymous email. No subject line. Just one sentence: "I'm sorry. I wanted what you had." I stared at that screen for hours. I don't even know if it was really her. But if it was, she finally told the truth. I didn't answer that email. I didn't even save it. Just read it for a little while, then closed the tab and sat in the dark. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel victorious. Just empty. Like everything had been torn apart inside of me and put back together again. And perhaps that is what healing sometimes feels like. Not some big moment. Not some brilliant "I showed them" moment. Just quiet. Tired quiet. The weeks after she left were strange. People would ask me if I was okay, despite the fact that I seemed to be just fine, smiled, laughed during meetings. But the thing is, I did not actually have a clue about what okay was anymore. Harper was everywhere in my head. Her laughter, her voice, the way she would jab me in the side when something was funny happening at a meeting, the manner in which we once sat down to coffee on Mondays. I kept looking over at the vacant chair beside me and waiting for her to come back, hoping that it was all some kind of bizarre dream. It wasn't, and the most bizarre thing? I didn't miss her. I didn't miss the version of her I had created in my mind, the one I counted on, trusted, loved even. Not love, not romantic love, it wasn't like that, but the kind of love you have for someone who feels like your adopted family. And that's what made it all so complicated. It would have been easier if she'd always been cruel, always been nasty, or mean-spirited. But she wasn't, or maybe she was, and I just didn't notice. I spent all this time trying to figure out what was real, what was not, where the switch had turned. I would go through old messages sometimes, scrolling through our selfies from happy hours, watching silly videos we had made through late-night deadlines. She seemed so real, so genuine, so loyal. But I guess that is the magic with people like that. They are what you need, until no longer in their best interest. And when that moment comes, the facade cracks, but only so much as to ruin you, not them. Others in the office wondered at her leaving. Some speculated. Most said nothing. No word was issued by the company, as is customary. But I noticed this. People started coming to me more often, asking for advice, looping me into projects, trusting me again. It was a quiet thing, but it seemed like reconstruction, like cleaning up broken glass piece by piece. It was an agonizingly slow process, but it was something. I started to say yes more and more to things in my life outside of work, to dinners, book clubs, spontaneous invitations. I think I was trying to feel connected again. Or maybe I simply did not want to spend so much time alone with my head. Because every time I went slow, that voice snuck in. How did I not notice? How did I allow her to get this close? Went so far as to go to therapy. Once, initially, informed the therapist it was no big deal, just a bunch of work stuff, and she nodded like she didn't buy it. Spent an entire hour going on and on, cried halfway through, involuntarily. I think what broke me wasn't the betrayal but the erosion of something sacred. Trust. How I had doubted myself due to her. How I had questioned my self-worth, my instincts, my memory. That does tricks in your head. When someone you love gaslights you and never screams at you, it not only destroys your self-worth, it reprograms your head. And that's not easy to turn back. A couple months passed. The new intern, Brianna, started asking herself if I'd mentor her. She kinda reminded me of myself those first few years, bright-eyed, wide-mouthed, always double-checking her work. I met her for coffee one day and told her, "Don't let anyone tell you you're hard to trust. If they do, question what they gain by having you doubt yourself." She nodded. It made sense. I realized I was saying it for her, but also for me. A few days later, I noticed on my desk from her a sticky note. It said, "Thanks for being someone that I feel safe around." I didn't expect it to affect me the way it did. I wept, actually, right there in my cubicle, because it had been so long since I'd felt like someone looked at me and saw me as safe. It reminded me I wasn't broken, that I still had the capacity to be good, to be solid, to be trustworthy. And I think that was the turning point. Not a climactic showdown, not some redemption story. A small bright yellow note from someone who had seen the version of me I had almost forgotten. The version that was there before all the breaking. I slept better, laughed more, came to work early because I wanted to, not because I didn't want to risk whatever horrors lurked in my inbox. And slowly, I started to forgive myself. Not her, not yet, maybe not ever, but me. For missing the signs, for staying in denial for too long, for needing someone so desperately that I closed my eyes to who they really were. That's a sort of forgiveness people don't know is hard. It requires work. You have to keep choosing it over and over again. Every time the flashbacks creep in. Every time you wonder if the next person you let in will be the next person who hurts you. But I was learning, still am, that even when you've been hurt, you can still be kind, still be strong, still be someone people aspire to. And that maybe the most frightening thing isn't being hurt, it's still being soft anyway. The last I saw Harper was 6 months afterward in a downtown marketing conference. I did not even realize she would be present. I was heading over to the coffee stand, grabbing myself a cup, when I heard my name being called out like a question. I was turned toward them and there she was, new haircut, new company ID, same eyes. She smiled, but it did not quite reach her face. "Hey," she said like nothing had happened, like we were pals again. I did not smile back. I did not glare, I don't think, just stood there stuck. I said hey quietly and returned to my coffee. She didn't go away, just hovered, watching me, like waiting for something to unfold. Maybe a scene, maybe closure, maybe forgiveness that she hadn't even earned. I gave her none of those. She swallowed hard. "I had heard you'd been doing well. Everyone had been talking about good things." I nodded. "I'm fine." Silence stood between us like a stretched wire. And then she spoke. "I messed up. I wasn't in a good place. It wasn't about you. I did not know how to be happy for someone when I was not happy with myself." I looked at her then, really looked, and for the first time, I wasn't hurt or betrayed or angry. I was just finished. Not done with it, not numb, just finished with the burden of it. I said, "I hope you figure that out, for your own sake." And I did mean it. Not as a dismissal, not as forgiveness either, just as honesty. She nodded, her face scrunched up like she might cry. But I didn't stick around to discover that. I just walked away, coffee in my hand, heart beating strong. And it was strange, because for the first time in a long, long time, I wasn't tormented. I was unencumbered. I returned home from the conference, and sat on my couch with the lights off and reflected on how far I had come. Not in an arrogant way, just a quiet, solid way. Like knowing you made it through a storm that you didn't realize you'd survive. And you're still wet, and the roof is still slightly leaky, but the worst of the hurricane has passed. The next day at work, Brianna came to my cubicle again. She was nervous about presenting something to our VP. I walked her through it, helped her to simplify it into the most basic message, gave her the sort of support I always wanted someone to give me when I was starting out. When she got back from her meeting, she was smiling from ear to ear and said to me, "It went well. I don't think I could have done it without you." I just said, "You had it in you all along. You just needed someone to remind you." That's something I would say about Harper, at a time when I did believe her. The only difference this time was that I truly believed what I was saying. I wasn't reading off a nice sentence. I'd lived the opposite. I'd experienced the other. I'd witnessed what it was like when someone pretended picking you up just so they could drop you harder. And I decided I'd rather be the kind of person who builds, not tears down. Even if it means someone is going to hurt me all over again. Because the alternative, closing off, shutting down, living suspiciously, isn't really living. It's existing. And I've had enough of existing. I want more than that now. I still get nervous every now and again. When a new person joins the team. When they become too close, too curious about the way I work, or what I'm talking to. There's always that small corner of myself that flinches, that glances over my shoulder, that asks myself, is this how it starts all over again? But that voice is weaker now, less overpowering, and I answer differently. I tell it, even if it does, I'll be okay. I've been here before. I know how to find my way back. That kind of knowing, the kind that's acquired, not words it stays with. It changes the way you come into a room, not in ego, but in balance, and people pick up on it. They can feel it. I'm not daunted at being promoted again. I'm not afraid of shining. That was something I used to carry around with shame, like maybe I should dim myself to make others feel more comfortable. But I've learned that true friends, true teammates, they don't ask you to shrink. They cheer the loudest when you get up. And if somebody can't do that, that's their storm to manage, not mine to ride out. Sometimes I still wonder what Harper and I would have been if only she told me she was struggling. If she talked to me honestly instead of ambition masquerading as friendship. Maybe we could have fought through it. Maybe not. But I'll never know. And that's all part of it too, the realization that some stories don't get do-overs. Some chapters end messy. Some people leave without saying a good farewell. And that's alright. I don't need a conclusion to remain whole. I only need to be at peace. And I believe I am now, here, remembering this story. Not because everything is worked out. Not because I never think about it anymore. But because when I do think of it, it doesn't hurt quite so much as it used to. It's just a part of my story now. Not the whole thing. Just one part. And the rest? I'm still writing that. Every day.